It happens almost every year like clockwork. The beginning of the year hits, and about mid-January, we get the crash bros coming back out in droves saying, this is the year that the housing market is going to crash. Well, is this the year that the Bay Area housing market will finally crash? Coming up on this Silicon Valley Snapshot. The fear-mongering media loves selling you juicy headlines, and so I'm sure that you've already read one or two juicy headlines at this point that this 2022 could finally be the year that we see a housing market crash across the nation, but specifically here in the Bay Area. What should we expect? What can we expect given the incredibly low inventory that we're experiencing at this point in 2022? But before we get into the data, before we get into the numbers and the good stuff, if you're a home buyer in today's marketplace and you're looking for a comprehensive data set to help you with your home buying decision making, you can text the word data plus the zip code or the neighborhood or the area that you're looking in, and we'll send that information straight to your inbox. And if you're a home seller in today's marketplace and you're looking for a comprehensive guide on figuring out, well, should you even sell your property right now? Is now the right time? And if now is the right time, what do you price it at? All of that will be delivered straight to your inbox when you text the word data plus your property address to the number down below. So let's cut right to the chase. Now that it's the beginning of 2022, will the market crash? The answer is probably not, but maybe here in the Bay Area. We never know. Well, that's what we're going to cover today. And really, what we need to think about this is basic laws of supply demand. That's what dictates whether the market's doing incredibly well, whether it's very slow. It all has to do with how much inventory we have relative to the amount of demand. If you've watched the last couple of snapshots, you'll know that right now, the inventory levels across the Bay Area are incredibly suppressed. In San Mateo County, inventory levels are down 63.1% year over year. Now, keep in mind, in a lot of these areas, we were already experiencing very low inventory levels a year ago. And so for us to be in a situation where we're down 63% from already suppressed inventory levels, you could imagine what that would do to this kind of market. Moving forward to San Francisco, inventory levels down 53%. Santa Clara County, inventory levels down 69.7%. My God. In San Benito County, inventory levels only down 5.9%. So in San Benito County, things are relatively stable in terms of inventory. In Contra Costa County, down 44.1%. And in Alameda County, down 49.9%. All of these are year over year numbers. So basically, in a year, we've seen anywhere from 50 to 60% of the homes eliminated, while the demand is seemingly still the same. And in some areas, demand is even greater than it was a year ago. So what would need to happen for the tides to turn? Well, first of all, we need to regain all of that inventory back plus way more. Let's just use Santa Clara County as an example. You could literally triple the amount of inventory overnight. The amount of inventory could triple overnight, and we'd still be in a seller's market. Think about that. We could literally triple the amount of homes. The absorption rate based on pending sales would be about 90%. Now, if you've watched previous videos and you're a data nerd like I am, you'll know that an absorption rate over 33% is considered a seller's market. And so even if we tripled the amount of inventory overnight, we'd still be at insanely high absorption rate levels compared to most of the country. Plus, I can't remember a time in history when we ever had inventory levels triple overnight or even over a 12-month period. Simply put, there are not enough homes on the market right now. And even if we doubled or tripled the amount of inventory, we'd still be in an incredibly hot seller's market. Now, let's take the flip side. Let's say, for example, we cut the amount of buyers in half. Well, if we cut the number of buyers in half in the same Santa Clara County situation, we'd still be in a market where there are more homes pending than there are homes for sale, which means the absorption rate would be well over 100%. I can't even think of a scenario in which half the buyers would be eliminated overnight. I mean, Google and Apple and Facebook would probably all have to go out of business. And then I think at that point, we could probably say that like the market's screwed. But right now, the supply is too low and the demand is too consistent for us to expect that one singular thing is going to cause the market to correct itself. Meaning there's not a situation, at least that I see, where if demand stayed consistent, that inventory levels could reach a point in which we would be in a buyer's market. Meaning like inventory levels would not be able to move up that fast, like ever, or that high ever, with the same amount of demand. Now, if inventory levels stayed low and suppressed, I can't see a situation in which just eliminating the buyers would somehow cause the market to correct itself. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that we would have to have the perfect storm, the perfect combination of both inventory increase as well as buyer demand decrease. How would this even happen? Well, I mean, there are a few distinct scenarios in my head. Number one, inventory levels have been suppressed for a while. So it's only a matter of time before we start to see more homes come back on the market. Now, if you've seen previous videos, you'll know that one of my arguments for such low inventory levels in this market, there's a couple of them. Number one, there are a lot of sellers right now who in a traditional market would be selling and downsizing. But the issue is that in order for them to sell and downsize, they're going to need to buy a home that's like $2 million. Well, when they bought their house for $300,000, they could never get that same kind of house because that house is now worth $3 million. And so those sellers, if they're going to sell their home and live the same quality of life that they're used to living, they're going to have to actually move out of the area. So the only way for them to get the same kind of house that they currently have right now is for them to sell and get out of the Bay Area. Well, some people have been doing that and they've been going to Nevada and Texas. Lucky them. They're not paying any taxes. They're moving to Nevada. They're moving to Texas and God bless them. Lucky them. They're not paying any taxes, but that's a fairly small minority in the grand scheme of things when you consider there are a lot of those same sellers or potential sellers that are staying put because they have roots here in the Bay Area. Guess what? The kids are here. The grandkids are here. Everything is tying them down to here. If their roots are somewhere else or they have kids or grandkids somewhere else, you better believe they're going there because it's going to be cheaper for them to live there. And it just makes too much sense for them to leave. But if they don't have that situation, those people aren't selling. And because to sell would mean to lose quality of life. And a lot of people in this area aren't willing to do that. What we're experiencing is the average length of home ownership is increasing dramatically every single year here in the Bay Area. And a lot of the potential sellers in that same situation choose not to sell because of the large capital gains bill that they're going to incur after selling their home. So what they do is they deploy an investment property strategy where instead of selling it right away, they leave the property, they rent it out, they go live wherever they want to live. By the way, they do a little bit of a refinance on that property to pull some cash out so they can buy their new home. They go live in Nevada or Texas or whatever tax-free state they want to live in, but they keep the property here in the Bay Area. They rent it out. They have a small loan on it that they use a cash out loan that they use to buy their new house. So they're living. They've got the home rented out. It's cash flowing positive. And then in 5 years, if they want to, they can 1031 exchange that property into several other investment properties that give them more return, give them more cash flow. But for the time being, they've got that home rented out. And so there are a lot of people deploying that strategy. And it's a great strategy. It's one that allows you to mitigate and offset a lot of your taxes. And by the way, when you die, all of those properties, those investment properties get a step up in basis. So there's very little incentive for people with even a little bit of money here in the Bay Area to get rid of those homes because number one, if they're selling a $3 million home and they only paid 300 grand for it, well, guess what? That capital gains bill is going to be like 600 grand. That's a lot of money. And so most people aren't willing to do that. And so what they end up doing is they deploy that strategy that I just talked about, and that is suppressing inventory levels even more. Couple that with the fact that we're still recovering from the fact that there was like no new construction for 5 years at the beginning of this last decade, like from 2010 to 2004, very few new homes were built because of the large recession that we experienced in 2008, 2009. So there's an inventory problem, clearly. But let's just say in a perfect world, in a magical world, where inventory levels were brought up by like 2x. So what would have to happen to the buyers for us to experience a slowdown in demand? Well, that could happen this year with increased interest rates. And if you watched last week's video, I went super in depth, and I highly encourage you to watch that video. I go really in depth on the mortgage increase and what that's going to do to purchasing power. And really, when all is said and done, a singular point increase in purchase power usually decreases a buyer's purchasing power by 10%. And so we could see a situation if rates are raised by, like, say 2% over the next 18 months. My gosh, like, that will do some damage to the overall demand here in the Bay Area. It won't get rid of buyers necessarily, but it will make them reconsider their purchase price. And a lot of them will have to buy something that's lower priced. Normally, though, I would argue that it's not the rate that would keep the buyers away from buying a home. It's usually the down payment. The down payment is the typical non-starter in the Bay Area, not the rate. The majority of home buyers here in the Bay Area always got a couple $1,000 extra at the end of the month to spare. So your debt to income ratio and the impact that an increased rate would have on that debt to income would be nominal in a lot of cases, I feel like. And this is just me having a gut feeling about this, where we could see, so even still a 2% increase in rate, while it may seem catastrophic and astronomical in nature, like most of the buyers who my team works with and most of the buyers who I've seen other agents work with, they've got a lot of cash to spare. And so they're usually not maxing out their debt to income ratios to purchase a home. And so a lot of the buyers with an increased rate would still be able to buy the same home because they still have that down payment saved up. So that's not to say that increased rates aren't going to impact the housing market and it won't impact buyer demand. But will it bring down buyer demand by 50%? It's hard to see a scenario in which inventory doubles and buyer demand is cut in half. I mean, honestly, like, some very crazy, catastrophic things would have to happen in order for that to come to fruition. But let's not rule it out of the equation. The fact of the matter is that if that were to happen, this isn't something that would happen overnight. This is likely something that we'd have warning signs for, like inventory levels would increase, 5% month over month over month over month for like the period of 10 months. And so you'll see the warning signs as a home buyer or seller. And so you'll know what you need to do far ahead of time. And that's why you keep tuning into these videos, to gauge the market and see in real time what the numbers have to say. Because right now the numbers say the market's super healthy. We expect this spring to be an incredibly hot seller's market. And in my opinion, it will be the frothiest seller's market we have ever experienced in the Bay Area. Meaning for these next 6 months, if you're a buyer, you're going to experience some carnage. So if you're smart about it, you would buy now in January or February before that real carnage happens in March, April, May. Because at the end of June, if you buy in January, February, you will be sitting in a lot of cases on $100,000 plus in equity. And that is almost a guarantee. And if some market correction happens in the future, so much appreciation will have occurred between now and then that in all likelihood, the chances are that your equity would be safe. Those are my 2 cents. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, if you disagree with me, I would love to hear it in the comments section down below. I'm open to healthy debate. At the end of the day, this is just one guy's opinion, but I do see a lot of real estate transactions. So if you made it this far in the video, please consider subscribing to this channel, click the notification bell, and give this video a thumbs up. It costs you nothing at the end of the day, and it really helps me out. It really helps us grow this channel and get in front of more people just like you. This is Danny Gould, everyone. I'm selling Silicon Valley, and I'll catch all of you in the next video.